Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the first official episode of Soul Butter
Hey,
Podcast. So we wanted to start out. I know those of you who've been following us, this isn't really our first episode, but it is our first official episode with our podcast name. And wanted to tell you a little bit about how that was born, because it is very entertaining. And we also wanted to give you a little bit of insight as to how we feel about it and why we decided to use that for our podcast name. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, I am Jenny Israel, and this is Amy Egan, and we are both health and spiritual life coaches, and we also are twin souls. And so we are here together to help create a more accessible approach to your life from a holistic perspective: spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. So let's talk about how that soul butter was born.
Well, let's talk about how long we were talking about what the name was going to be. So Jenny and I have decided, just through some spiritual, downloads, that we're going to have this merchandise company, and they had to be the type of clothes. And, we both have a passion for fashion, and how, which are very similar because we are twin souls. And so we started talking about, we were coming up with all kind of stuff, like
Crazy stuff.
I mean, we were going down some rabbit holes. And one day I just was saying how, well, whatever it is, it has to be like, the material has to be, when you put stuff on and you're just like, it feels like butter, so soft and smooth. Like, we can't have any itchy and scratchy clothes. We have to have butter clothes, butter for your soul.
Butter for your soul.
And then we both were like, wait a minute.
And I came back on to Marco, and I'm like, could barely get it out because I was cracking up so much. And I'm like, oh my God, soul butter for your spiritual drip. And that was it. We completely lost our minds. It was so funny. And we knew in that moment, regardless of how ridiculous it was, that we had stumbled across it. That was
and this was after, like, really, like, the way that we do things. We tap into something and we won't let it go. So it was like weeks and weeks of like, no, maybe it's this, texting each other, random stuff. We're like, okay, that's good. But what about this? What about that? Like word association, kind of like, and it's fun to play that with your twin soul, because it's, you both flow together so much.
Yes.
So Soul Butter was born actually for the merchandise company. That all the ideas that we both have some of our favorite merchandise on now of other companies, and how much we love this kind of stuff. So we were thinking about like mugs, or like even like some lotion, anything smooth that literally feels like butter for your soul. So it's like that comforting feeling. So when we started talking about our podcast, we were doing it again. We were like coming up with all these abstract and fun, well, let's merge these, and because we can get a little we can go out of the earth's atmosphere sometimes, and we're like, oh, what about the refiner? We can merge that with the sun and the silver, and we started going to this deep hole. And I don't remember, was it recently? Like, we're getting ready to launch. And
I mean, I was saying, like, okay, so if we're going to launch this podcast, then we need to start using that language. We need to start talking about what is the butter for your soul? What is the soul butter? And it's everything that we do together in the collaboration of God and the Holy Spirit channeling through is literally that. It is a way to create a safe, warm, comfortable place to have a relationship with yourself, have a relationship with God, have a relationship with life, something that feels like a safe place that you can go, you can be at peace, and you can be comfortable, but something too that is heated by the fire. So, this idea of melted butter, like that kind of soft. And then the more we researched it, the more we realized I never knew that there was any spiritual symbolism in butter at all. And then she and I start finding all of these things, how it was this super spiritual item, kind of like milk and honey, like nectar of the gods kind of thing, this magical hidden layer between milk and cream, this liquid gold that was hidden in there. And it's used in Hindu, ancient Hindu, and still is. They still have feasts and rituals that include ghee and butter. There's stuff in Christian scripture and the Bible that reference the ointment, God's ointment, as being the butter.
Yeah.
But you got to throw in a little New York and a little Baltimore, because we're
Right.
both from the Baltimore area, and then I moved to New York, so it's got to be butter.
It's butter.
Like,
And
I
that's
think
just the way we
about that
naturally
Saturday
say it.
Night Live episode where they're like, Barbara
Right.
Streisand, her legs are like butter.
Butter. And now that I actually moved to the West Coast, everyone thinks I'm from New York, which is hysterical, because I'm like, well, my twin's in New York, but we're both actually Baltimore. So we just have that. When you say it, it's just like, oh, butter.
Like butter.
Like butter. So yeah, I think it just naturally, like, why are we trying to come up with another name? Because not only is it's what we do. It's like what we do when we talk is like, we marry the physical nature of earth, of our bodies, of everything, to the spiritual by the mental and the emotional part of us. It's all married together. So why not just call the podcast that? Because the things that we talk about is just the emotional and mental and spiritual side. We're going to have the physical side with our merchandise company. So eventually you'll see us wearing all of our gear. And it's all just happening. God just told us to jump and go for it. We've already been doing podcasts, but this is the official launch, 2023, January 6th.
That's right. So thank you all for joining us for this absolutely fun, exhilarating ride.
Yes.
We hope that it will push against your belief systems. We hope that it will also validate your inside feelings, the relationships you have with yourself and God. We hope that it pushes against that and breaks you open, but also validates all the good stuff. And we hope that you will help collaborate in these conversations in the future. So thank you all for joining us. So let's dive in to what we're going to talk about for our first official episode. And, this is being recorded on January 6th, but probably won't be published for a little bit. So we do want you to know that regardless of what kind of timelines we're discussing during our conversation, that everything is within God's time. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter when you hear this message, it's going to be a perfect time for you to hear it. Exactly. So we do want to mention that, because some of the things that we're going to talk about today do have a place in linear time, but we're going to challenge that too today in our conversation. So Eve, you want to start, and let's talk about rest.
Sure. So I just want to give a little bit of my testimony as far as my life story really quick. From Baltimore my whole life, lived in Maryland, went to college here, raised my son here, left and went to California, working for my brother, all to have a space for myself to really work on my coaching business and what God was doing in my life. So we're just about up to the year mark, and just reassessing my life. And I flew to Florida to spend a week with my parents, about 10 days with my parents. And as the new year starting, I'm on social media, I'm feeling this pressure that we all feel. And especially because this is a year mark of like my transition over to California, and where is my life going? I don't have a solid plan right now. I do have a vision. I just don't know how to get there yet. So I just kept having all this anxiety build up, and it was like the first day, the second day, the third day, and I'm like, I got to do these things, and I'm making these lists in my head. Like, I got to get my coaching. I should be advertising my coaching business, because marketing. I am an entrepreneur. I used to own a cake business. My brain went into this entrepreneurial marketing. I'm also communication and marketing background for 15 years through Hopkins. So my brain went into, it's January. People only have money in December. No one spends money in January. I really got to get my coaching packages out there. I'm missing it. Like, that's a key too, like what you're missing. And the more that I tried to do, the more it was like, I don't know if, I'm sure everybody feels this. It's like, it can feel like procrastination. And sometimes procrastination is procrastination, but sometimes it's not. And we're so easy to be hard on ourselves. I'm like, I'm procrastinating again. And I was like, just, you know what? I just started really praying and meditating on what God wanted me to do. And he said nothing. And I kind of hate when he says that, because I'm a doer and I'm performance-based. So I have to check boxes off. And God always shows me this big box, and it's called a rest. And of all my list, the rest box is really big, because that's where he is. Be still and know that I am God, he says. So you won't know what he's doing until you rest. And resting is such a great opportunity for just listening to him and being able to write that new to-do list that's aligned with him, staying in alignment to what he wants. Because man, we are workspace people. So we start writing this list because what we want, well, God wants me to be a coach and speak and write these books. So I better hurry up and I better do this. So I started resting in him, and I just felt like it was okay to take this time with my parents and just rest. And I did nothing. I didn't think about it. I shut off my brain to work and I just rested. And it was such a beautiful, that feeling of giving it to him, my to-do list, just giving it over to him. I was like, this feels right. It just felt spiritually aligned. And then I took a sub trip to Baltimore for my son's birthday before I go back to California. And now I feel like a little bit of like, all right, now I got all the downloads. I can start writing the plan, but I'm still not working. I'm still not going yet. You know, this right here, what we're doing now is we were already doing it. It's nothing super new. And I think we'll get into that as time goes on, that it's kind of like the earth and the planets and everything aligns with exactly how God wants it, like heaven and earth. Really, it is all worshiping, and people have a problem with that the name of worship, the word of worship, because we have so many attachments to it. But like when you think of the earth worshiping, we don't really know what that means, but it's just in the way that they naturally move. And if we're aligned, we'll naturally move with it more and more.
In our conversation, you used the word obey. And that resonated with me deeply because of the fact that you cannot deny the fact that nature obeys natural law.
Right.
Cycle does not get interrupted. Inside of nature, a season is a season, a cycle is a cycle, right? It obeys God's natural law. And you can't deny that, but you're using that word in a different context. Right. So it's a little bit more acceptable to your soul, right? Whereas worship is so attached to religion. And so we and
obey that
word. We push against those words because it feels like a label that we're stuck inside of something.
Like you have to do something. And nature doesn't have to do anything. It just does. And I think that, there's a beautiful thing that God gave us as humans. It's the only thing that makes us human, and that's choice. Mm-hmm. Like, if you think about the way God created the earth, animals, trees, everything doesn't have a choice. We have a choice. It's free will. So we can go up against God. We can say, we're not gonna, it's dormant season. We're not gonna be dormant because we have things to do. Okay. Like I got a business to run. I got to get paid. I got to pay my bills. Okay. And God's like, if you just trust in me, you'll be making 10 times more money. Just chill, like trust in me. So it's just the beauty of looking around us and seeing what is nature doing. And that's something that we share in common, is the love for watching God work in nature. And now comparing it to, okay, what are we doing? And we talk about this all the time. For a long time, I don't know the study of astrology, but I respect and love it in the sense of, I think it's a good time to say, like, you use a word of like predictive, like don't go to nature trying to predict what you should be doing. Again, that's us taking control. That's why.
Trying to.
Right. Instead of using nature to validate. There's so many times where I'm like, Jenny, I'm just feeling this spiritual season where I feel like this and all my friends are feeling it like that. And you'll be like, oh, that's because the moon is in Gemini and doing this. And I'm like, yes. And that's my love and passion for the stars, the moon, everything that nature. And I said this in my small group, in my coaching small groups, like, look around. What is nature doing right now? And what are we doing? Especially in the holiday season, we're going up against, because of why? Because media tells us, whoever it is that decided Christmas was going to be gift giving and stressing out about family, all of those things work against God. Should we stop doing it all? No, I'm not saying that, but find the joy. And what is God? It's joy and peace, but also rest. And that season should be a rest season. And we're still in rest season. And I would love for you to talk about what you are finding out about, like the actual yearly, the calendar, and as far as March, we'll just say that, and I'll hand it back to you.
So, as far as my own little testimony, as Amy is going through all of her things, and she, like, I think it was January 1st, she sends me this text and she's like, you know, all this stress that I was in and feeling inadequate and the doubt and the, you know, feeling I was falling behind and all of these things. And God spoke to me in my meditation today, and I journaled it all. And it was all around being a steward.
Yeah.
Amy, I just need you in stewardship. That's all I need. And my text back to her was, well, you know, your clarity is inspiring, because I'm just as lost right now as I was a year ago on this day. And so I was just as guilty of being in a place of looking at linear time, right? January 1st is the beginning. December 31st is the end, right? So Western culture takes our calendar year and creates linear time. And it's not just like we're marking our calendars. It changes the entire way that we think. So now we live in a linear existence, meaning we don't necessarily think about cycle and the fact that natural law is cyclical, right? God has designed everything inside of cycles: birth and death, planting and harvesting, the circadian rhythm of sleep and awake. The sun comes up, the sun sets, the moon rises. It pushes the tides on our planet. Like, these are cycles that it's impossible to interrupt, right?
Yep.
So this idea of linear time goes against natural design. Yet it was over time, ancient times, developed to support. In the beginning, these calendars actually supported natural law, right? So it supported planting seasons, it supported tidals with the moon, it supported solar versus lunar time. It supported how the earth was turning in those solar and lunar times with season. So there was this, it originally was a 10-month schedule, which is why if you go into the Latin derivative of the names of our months, it's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But it starts with March, right? So if we look at it from that perspective, December.
So like, say that what you said to me, just for people to understand, like October is
octo, right?
Octo, right.
And like, November is nueve, right? Like, and December is dice, or, you know, like, so when we think of that's like more Spanish, but like the Latin derivative of those numbers is where the names of our months came from. Even the days of the week were originally from the names of the gods, you know, for these specific days of the week. And then it switched over to every day of the week had a planet associated with it. And so this is from, you know, I mean, the Mayan calendar is even different from all of that. I think their first month of the year starts in summer in July. So we also have some geography stuff going on, depending on where you are in the world, which I love because of the fact that there is this consistency of natural law, yet it shifts around a little bit depending on where you are. So,
where you live.
And that, you know, so my favorite book character ever is Aslan the lion from the Narnia series. And I feel like he's been my animal totem since I was a little girl. And come to find out much later in life that there's this allegorical reference to Christ consciousness, resurrection, with Aslan the lion. Although the author does not say Aslan is meant to be Christ. What he does say is that he believed that God's law is God's law. So regardless of what realm you exist in, what dimension you're from, where you are on this planet, God's law is God's law. However, how it manifests from place to place might be a little bit different, right? But it's still law. Still law. So this idea of the Mayans, where they were, you know, their first month of the year was July. Whereas even the Chinese New Year's, they still celebrate in March, the beginning of the year. In Old Testament, March is the beginning. March is the first month of the year.
And when you say that, I think of like birth, spring. It just makes sense. Like that's where nature follows that, the rhythm of God.
When we start to bloom.
And you think about the energetic pulse on people around you when it starts getting warmer out here. It's like, oh, I just feel like so much more energy. The dark is starting to cease. We have so much more light, and it's natural in us to go and do then. But And just that, I know that's where you're going, but just to point out, like, but because of where we live, what you're saying, and how our culture does it, now we feel this pressure that January 1st, we have to have a New Year's resolution and we need to start now. We try really hard. People are trying really hard right now. So
Really?
redo, have a birth of something. I'm going to eat different. I'm going to start this company. I'm going to do these things. And God's like, chill. Like, I told you to rest. Yeah, it's resting isn't just stagnant. It's receiving, to me, to feeling God so he can give you the direction to make the plans, and you can start writing them. But sorry, I'm passing it back to you because you were telling your testimony too.
Well, I mean, I was in this place where I had the worst flu of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm the one that viruses just pass through me. Everyone else in my house gets sick. And I'm the steward in my house of health. Right.
That's right.
And so all of a sudden I get hit with the worst flu of my life 3 days before Christmas. Not a single gift was wrapped. I still hadn't finished my shopping. And my whole month, I was so on top of it, in my peace, in my joy. Those elves were not going to steal my joy.
That's right.
The elves were going to be part of my joy.
That's right.
I was on top of it, right? Well, that was a load of shit, because in my unconscious mind, I was collapsing inside of like feeling vulnerable, feeling scared, feeling like it didn't matter what I was going to try to achieve, that Christmas would be a massive failure, right? Like, this is the dark voice in my head. So here we are getting into the week. We're supposed to host Christmas Eve for the whole family. We have $600 worth of catering ordered, ready. We're going to pick it up. And our whole house gets hit with this flu, except my 5-year-old. He was the only one that escaped. And it took me out, for 2+ weeks. I'm still, you'll hear me still coughing, you know, every time I giggle, I cough. But I was in such a dark place. So by the time January 1st rolls around, I didn't even see the ball drop. And all of my expectations for the holiday destroyed, gone. We had to cancel everything. And I'm sitting in the deepest cellular fatigue that I had ever felt. I felt betrayed by my body. I felt betrayed by God, because the season of joy had been taken from me. And I went into a place of, I'm done. I quit life. I'm not doing this anymore. And why? Because there was this little linear expectation in my mind that I had set for 2022. Made new in 2022, right? So on December 31st, I'm new, right? It's over. It's done. That's the end. Start again with a new goal. So here I am on December 31st in the same place of goo, of being in the kiln all over again, literally cooking in this fever that would not go away for 7 days. I am at a loss with everything. I have no direction. I don't know who I am. And it was this moment.
I mean, sickness will take you out.
So it basically put me into a place where the devil had me, period. Period. I was literally ready to ditch my service, ditch 13 years of building a business, everything that I had done, every activation I'd gone through, every person I had activated. I was done. It was all a waste of time. Thank God for my soul sisters that kept reminding me during that time that God is putting you in timeout, because you felt like you needed to go, where whatever that action plan was. And this is a season of hibernation. This is a season of rest. This is a season of recuperation. This is a season for, reflection and reverence, especially when we think about the miracle of the holiday time. But yet we don't function inside of that idea. We function inside of what the world says that we need to be doing. And especially and when we talk about geographical, right? Like manifestation from place to place, potentially being a little bit different. Like on the other side of the world from us, they're in summer, right? They're going into summer right now. So how they feel about this season is probably a little different than how we feel in the northeast part of the United States. The bears are hibernating, like everything's asleep. The trees are asleep. The ground is asleep. Nothing is growing right now. Nothing is moving. Nothing. Yet here we are. We got to be of the world, right? We can't miss out. We have to chase down what everyone else is chasing, or
Yeah.
we might miss out.
Yeah.
We might miss out.
Exactly.
And so here we are.
Right. So here we are. And I think that, just so great. When we think about nature, and like you said, or like you referenced, I said, and God gave us these words of like obeying, like the trees aren't worried, like nothing's worried, like everything's going to have, they're going to get, the birds are getting their food. It's winter. The birds like, oh my God, it's winter. Where am I going to get my food today? This is the thing. Like if we try to mimic the way natural law and we trust in God, we trust in rest. And that's the problem. We weren't taught what rest is supposed to be. And I can tell you from my experience that rest was amazing. And we know this, we know it because we take vacations and we feel good and we don't want to go back to work, but where we have those moments. And I always love that in myself, where when I used to work in the corporate world and I take vacation, I could shut down my computer and not think about that job again. And I didn't care. That's that. And a lot of people aren't like that, but I knew I was good at doing that, the shutdown. But then I got my own business. And then there were years there were no vacations. And that's when things start to shift, when you feel like somewhere you have control. You have control of how God is going to make these things happen. And for me, it's everything that I have is because I've spent time with God. Everything that I have. And in every way that I've been, I'll say rewarded for lack of better terms, but the way that I get rewarded, and rewarded to me means I get to stay in peace and I get to stay in my joy, is because I'm constantly trying to lock, and we talk about this a lot on our podcast, like finding time for you and God, finding silence, finding time to, even if it is in the middle of the summer, are you spending time with God? But this is a season of that. And that is hard for us. We don't even know how to do it. All I know is I have to keep giving it to God if the thoughts come in my head. But what about it's a trusting? Amy, do you trust him? Do you trust that he's not going to make you rest and you're going to miss out? It's that constant reforming my thoughts and shutting down the thoughts that don't align, and allowing and convincing myself of remember how you feel about your faith. I mean, God always takes care of you. So just think about what I said before, how if I want to do it, that's fine. I could be successful too. But what if I let God do it and I get to be 10 times more successful? And what success to me is being able to affect more people with my resources. That's what success is to me. So,
well, I mean, it's now I think about how many people that I've talked to over the last week who all are acknowledging in one way or another this need to go inside, right?
Yeah.
Like this need to be inside, to be internal, to point to the inner wisdom, the inner voice. And a lot of people are suffering from low energy, fatigue, holiday burnout. We spent the entire month of December talking about busyness, right? And this burnout coming from pushing against something that isn't on time. Like we're pushing into a cycle that isn't even going to get here until like March or April. Right. So we are attempting to try to change natural law.
Right.
And make the cycle our own. Right. And this happens it's reinforced everywhere. It's reinforced in the consumerism, obviously, because all of the sales of gym memberships, nutrition, like supplements, all of these things, right, that come into this season. It's inside New Age spiritualism. I see it happening everywhere in my own community of pushing manifestation plans.
Yeah.
Well, you got to get your vision board done this month. Yeah. You got to like make sure that you put God in his place. You make God your personal vending machine. Right. So that idea of pushing this agenda.
Make sure you put God in his place.
Right. Put God in his place and you let him know, like, this is the plan I've ordered.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
And we all are guilty of this on some level, where it's like we think, and there's nothing wrong with having a position of courage and confidence in your life to be a master of your destiny, right? To be able to work with the anointing that you've been given and make it giant and make it
Yeah.
huge, right? But the idea of trying to push again to chase it,
Yeah.
right? And that's where you use the word predictive. Like, I think about that predictive work as being something where we're chasing something, we're chasing after something so we can try to control it. We can
It's so good.
try to control the outcome.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about before. I'm reading this book, Torrey Roberts, Balance. And of course, we don't believe in irony. It's synchronicity and how like God's talking to me in all these different ways. And people are saying, oh, you know, people who aren't on this path are like, what do you mean God's talking to you? Well, ABC happened at my parents' house, and then I pick up my book and this chapter that I get on the plane and open up the next chapter, and it's on rest. Literally, I think it's called The Gift of Rest. And I was like, okay, I hear you. But one of the main things he was talking about is living in abundance and the abundance mindset, which is something God has been working on me for probably a few years. Not living in the lack, and living in lack is what you were just talking about. I have to chase these things so I can have them. And that's what I was telling you about this chapter that said, like, when you live in abundance mindset, it's already yours. You're not chasing anything. So why would I, and I used to say this all the time before I really understood it. Like, why are people making these plans? I'm like, man, I don't understand manifesting. I just did it. I'm like, why would I want to manifest something when like I'm telling God what to do and he's got something greater for me over here? Now, I do understand having a vision over your life and making a plan to get to that vision. So even in this podcast, what do we need to do? We still need to work to make the podcast happen, but are we on overdrive right now? I mean, there's so many things we wanted to do for this podcast to launch today. And we talked about it like, oh, we got to do this. And man, it'd be great if we could just hurry up and get this intro recorded and get the banner, and we got to do the logo. And we both were like, you know what, let's just go live with what we got now. And I feel like God always calls me to that. And I kept hearing him say, and maybe this will bless somebody else, but just go and do with what I gave you. That's it. And it's such a relief to like, well, I have this, again, abundance mindset. Like, I'm not going to get anything. I have this and I'm going to use this to take a step. And that's really how God works in our lives. We overwhelm ourselves. He's just asking us to do this one little morsel of thing like we did today. And if we, just like we're trying to come up with the name for this, you know, that's the toiling, you know, where others may see we have to, but we just let it go. We didn't toil in it. We were just letting it flow and like, oh, well, it'll come to us when it comes to us. To me, that's what like working with God in the abundance mindset is. It already exists. We knew that. That was we know that God has this word. We have to do the work to find what's ours. That's the difference of like toiling. Tori would call it toiling. God never asked us to toil for anything, to work, to like grind the way that we grind in our culture. And man, like this season, you were so right when you said you can try as best you can, but then I say, oh, those are the shoes I wanted and they're on sale and I should probably start hiking again. I haven't hiked in a while. And then the next thing goes and it's like, you know, the beginning of the year and the gym memberships. Oh, I probably should have joined the gym too. And you just go whatever your thing is because it's in your face. Everyone's doing it. So you feel the pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. And rest doesn't even come into mind. We get what the week of Christmas, most people, you know, get that vacation around like kids. And so that, okay, well, I'll get to rest then. It's more of the vacation mindset, right?
Between Christmas and New Year.
Stressful time of the year, you know, and that vacation turns out to be a mini hell on earth because you're home with your kids and it's chaos and it's, you know, whatever. But this idea of rest is so underplayed. And, you know, and I think about the fact that like, as you were talking about our discovery of soul butter and, you know, I just kept using the term comic masturbation because of the fact that we were literally cracking ourselves up and cracking each other up. The process was so joyful. And so exciting because of the fact that it was like, we knew that we were capturing these things that were like floating out around us and that were just ready to be captured, but we had to work our way to that place. But it wasn't, there was no, and I have to give us some celebration and some props.
Okay, please do. Cause you know, 2023, we
allow ourselves to get stressed out.
We didn't.
We are both high performance perfectionists. And we actually did a really good job of putting all that down and just letting this be what it was. But
and just in working together, you and I, like, we both have, like, if you would send me something you were really excited about, and I was like, okay, like, there was no like, oh no, she doesn't like it, I thought that was right. Like, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that from you. It was just like, we're just brainstorming together. That's all we're doing. Like, I just love that. It was very joyful the whole time. It was fun.
And so it's a wonderful testament to being able to put those things down, the putting down the high performance, putting down the expectations, putting down the perfectionism, putting down what this is all supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And, you know, so the more that this theme of rest was pushed in to these old belief systems, this old mentality, you know, it really started to push some really interesting things to the surface for me that I didn't even realize existed in my unconscious until that time when I was having a full-on argument with God.
Yeah.
And shaking my fist and being like, no, I was supposed to be made new. This is done now. I'm supposed to be able to birth myself into 2023, knowing exactly who I am, having a clear vision for where I'm going, be able to step into abundance instantaneously, right? And all of these expectations around what that was supposed to look like. And instead being in this very, very dark place of sickness that was burning all of this stuff up and out of me. And being able to step back and realize that the only clarity that I needed was the fact that I had allowed my expectations to put myself into a place of confusion. And you say it all the time that confusion is how the devil works.
Yeah, the devil's the author of confusion.
And so this idea of being in a rest period, the more Amy and I talked about this, the more it started to flesh itself out. And then I realized, excuse me, that so January 6th, which is the day we're recording this, is actually a pretty important day for me when I look at cyclical things. Okay. Cyclical challenges that God has presented. Each time the cycle has come around, it's been an invitation to do something. And it's been the same invitation from the beginning. It's just layered, right? So deeper and deeper and deeper into my own appointment, my own anointing, and really discovering that my prayers were being answered, that I was learning who I was, that my identity was becoming more crystallized, but I had to get rid of all of this other stuff in the meantime. And January 6th happens to be a day that it just cyclically repeats itself over and over again for me, which is really interesting. But when we decided that we were going to do the first podcast recording, and I realized the day that it was landing on, and then I realized that it was the full moon in Cancer. And I saw this thing pop up and it was on my Google News. So it wasn't even anything I clicked on, but you know how they'll give you a little bit of a caption when the news article pops up. And it said something about full moon in Cancer landing on January 6th. And it talked about relationship, emotions, like all these different things. And then it talked about retrograde and how we are in Mars and Mercury retrograde. Now, even with all of my astrology knowledge, even though I'm not an astrologer, but like all of my knowledge in that area of spiritual science and all the things I know, I still wasn't listening. I knew the fact that we were in Mars retrograde, which is one of my lead planets. It is the planet of war, planet of action, right? It's also a medical planet. So it has a lot to do with our life force. I get sick every single time there's a Mars retrograde, every time. So Mercury retrograde, that's our Lord of communication. So we are literally in a place right now where our planets are shut down for action, for health, for communication, right? And now we have the full moon in Cancer, which highlights our emotionality, our need to feel at home. And when we think about home, we're talking about more of an existential version of home, right? This feeling of peace, a feeling of safety, a feeling of warmth, support, where we are heard, we are seen, we are cared for, and we are loved. And so this feeling of home is something we carry inside of us, but we do have things in our lives that can reflect this idea of home. And fact that we're in Capricorn season, those two things push against each other in the astrological chart. So Capricorn's all about business. It's what you do in who you are, meaning did God anoint you to be in service, right? Your overall purpose. But a lot of us search for that inside of our career.
Right.
So these two things acting together put us into this place of needing to reflect on ourselves emotionally. And those things that are super important to us that create a sense of home. And it also is about your purpose, because we're pushing into Capricorn, right? So are you aligned in what you do with who you are, right? And this feeling and the relationships that you have in your life. And that doesn't necessarily mean your blood, right? Your family, your true family that brings a feeling of home can be a friendship. It can be a coworker. It can be your spouse. It can be your pet, like it doesn't necessarily have to be your mom, your dad, your siblings. You're an extremely fortunate person in this world if you have that in your blood, right? But, this idea of creating a sense of home inside, and then that your external world would start to bring this about. And this particular report, the girl actually said something that I immediately sent it to Egan, and I was like, oh my God, she literally just said what we've been talking about the fact that we are not cosmically supported to be in action right now. In fact, cosmically, from a planetary standpoint, God doesn't have planets aligned for us to do anything until March. And here we are out there grinding and hustling and being boss bitches and all of the buzzwords that are out there. And we're not even inside. We're pushing against natural law.
And that just made me think about how rest doesn't necessarily mean nothing. Rest to me and stillness is still active. It's very active. But it's an action where if you think of meditation isn't just pure stillness and people are like, cleanse your thoughts and you can't think. I'm like, meditation is still an action. You're still doing something. It's an active rest. So we're not saying just go veg out and watch TV, clearly, don't do anything. Don't take care of your kids. Just tell everybody you're resting now. And that's that, that's not what rest is. To me, rest is aligning, like you just said, everything that the planets are supporting us in the validation of what we're thinking that this season should be. And for me, when you say home, I think about the feeling. I am very fortunate. And I just went to go see my parents and I was with them. And I could be purely myself. I've chosen that. There's things that I do and say that they're probably not used to. And I stand in my wholeness and myself with them, but I don't feel I'm safe with them. So they are my home, even though they don't live in the same place I lived and they are my blood parents. I feel at home with my parents in the fact I could be myself. Do they support it back? Yeah, in a way that they listen, but I'm more supported by you, where I know we're on the same level when we can talk to each other. So, but home to me is our natural state. Our natural state. So I think about our soul. Like my soul was at home before I was born. Like there was a soul. God gave me the soul and put it in my body. That's home. And in rest, we need to realign and make sure what we're doing in our life is still in alignment so we can be home all the time. So when we go, as we said on this podcast now, we go and we start telling God what we want to do. And like I said, it could be in alignment with what he wants. He can give us a vision. This podcast is his vision. We've both seen it. I've seen it for years, but okay, we know that. So now we're going to tell God everything that needs to get done in time. And we're going to tell him when it's going to launch and what it's going to look like. And there's still a lot of misalignment in that. Even if we have the best of, intentions, God still wants our rest. And like I said before, rest could be in seasons of action too. It should be, because on the seventh day he said rest. First of all, he created the whole earth, seventh day rest. And you'll hear me say all the time, it's part of the 10 Commandments. Don't kill your mother, don't kill anyone, honor your mother and father, and get some rest. It's all in the same, when he set it up, So it is a very important thing, but I think that we need to understand that resting isn't just sleeping. it's active rest. And I love that. It's the action to get you back home, to make sure you're in alignment with home, being surrounded by the right people, doing your meditation, really listening to God. And what does that look like? It might mean telling everybody, I'm every night I'm going to do whatever, my study. Or like I say, even if it's once a week, if you're that busy and you could only do once a week, mine's Fridays now. It used to be Monday. Now Fridays are kind of my dedicated time where I spend 4 or 5 hours just, it doesn't always mean a certain thing, journaling or reading. It's whatever God leads me to that morning. Sometimes it's talking to you for an hour on my hike, like just getting grounded and making sure I'm staying aligned, because I want to stay home. Home to me is like, I'll keep going back to the presence of God is and this, he kept giving me this a lot lately, like the peace beyond all understanding. I want to be at a peace that I don't even understand some days. Like, I don't know, all this crazy chaos is going on around me, and legit things are happening to me, but I feel oddly fine because it's, my faith has been not perfected, but I'm being perfected to have this faith. And the only way I've gotten there is through my rest period. That's it. So instead of thinking it as like, oh no, well, how am I supposed to rest? Now I have this, like, when he told me to rest, my instant reaction was like, no, I can't. What do you mean? I can't rest. I got this stuff to do. So my humanness was like, try to push up against him. Once I accepted it, it's like laying in your mom's arms. You know, that's how it felt. Like, it felt very home. It felt very supported. And I felt like butter. I was just bathing in butter. in my,
Well,
my
we've used the word, well, you just used the word accepted. And, we've said the word a couple of times through the podcast, the invitation. And, these are words that, I know that we have a mixed audience that's going to come in to watch these podcasts, and that was intentional. That's what Amy and I were hoping for, to have a mixed community of people, that some were coming from, very Christian foundational backgrounds. We have a lot of church people. On my side, I have those people who were looking for the alternative to church. And, more of, and I don't like the label Christian, and I don't like the label New Age spirituality. Right. And I don't, Amy and I are both like that. We are limited inside of our language at times to have to call things by a certain name. But I don't like those labels. But yet we do have a collection of faith. We have a collection of beliefs. We have a collection of practice coming in. But from the perspective of the language of God, invitation is something that pops up a lot. And we do see that in the word of God. And we also, like, we've already used the word ointment. And so, through this conversation, we want to bring everybody back to this idea of, what are you being invited to do in this season? Okay. So we have the Western culture that's created linear time. We have God, who has created cyclical time. We do have Western culture responsibilities that are assigned to linear time, right? So this invitation to accept what God is offering through a season of cycle, and be able to align with that, to come home to ourselves and be able to rest, knowing that we're not going to miss anything, because it's all aligned within cycle and within natural law. And that if we get on board with what nature obeys every minute of every day, and we just take a minute to accept that invitation to go inside and check ourselves and say, how am I feeling right now? What do I need? Where am I being pointed? Not, I've said this a couple times over the last couple of days, but being in the world, not of the world, right? You can be in God's world. You can be inside of creation, and move in that flow, and move inside of these invitations, and move in the ointment, right? And still be aligned with your human responsibilities.
Right.
That one does not have to be abandoned for the other. And so we want to take a minute to just review those things for you. So what is the invitation and what is the ointment? And so when we say that, it's what are you being invited to do? And maybe we're offering this as, you know, a quote unquote journal prompt, right? It's like, you know, what are you being invited to do this week? What's been coming forward for you over the last couple of weeks of the year, you know? Maybe taking a different look at your word for the year, or taking a different look at your resolution, you know, for the year. And instead of working through the mindset, do what the planets are even offering you the opportunity to do, what God's design is offering, an invitation to rest, go inside, think about what you're feeling instead of just what you're thinking about, right? It's like, what are the feelings in there? And the goal being, how do you bring yourself home?
Yeah, I love that. When you said invitation, I was just thinking about how many times we've said to each other too, just to introduce this concept that God always gives us invitations throughout our lives. And a lot of times for me, that's an invitation to change. And you're saying go home, which I love. I love that language. An invitation to come back to him is same thing. And he opens the door and he's very gentle and he just knocks. So he doesn't open the door, take that back. He knocks and we get to open the door. There's the invitation. But the invitation is also walking him and the alignment to what is good for your soul, what is home in. And right now, like you said, if we just look around and throughout these seasons, where is the invitation right now? It's in rest. And what does that mean for you? And we've covered that now, that rest is active. Rest doesn't mean that you just go lay on the couch and do nothing. It's a very active, it is a journaling. It is a asking God, go ask God. He's that simple. He always says, ask, seek and you shall find, just ask me. If you want wisdom, just ask, I'll give it to you in abundance. He's such an awesome God, but there's this part that we miss that's us. That's still rest though. The action of asking and seeking is still, you do that in rest. If you think about it, every time we've gone to God, we're doing it in rest. We're doing it in meditation, or like we always say, in the shower. You know, that is a resting your mind. It's like the water comes and the world shuts out. That's a state of rest. So just understanding what rest is, and that he's calling us to just, this isn't just a moment in the day. This is a season. Stop trying to push against it. And in your own action, that's what the rest is. Your own action and your own, you know, feeling responsible to manifest this list that you put out. I got to write my list and I got to do this and I got to do that. Like, the thing is, have you ever, this is a dumb question I'm asking everybody else, but like, have you ever known, like, when God shows you something, man, it's so easy. Like we said with naming this, like, it's just a flow and it's joyous. And if there's something in your life that isn't in flow and joyous, it's probably not aligned to God. And you need to rest in that and go back to him and ask, what am I doing wrong? Show me the way. I mean, when I went into meditation, my word was celebrate. He was telling me all last year, you don't celebrate enough. You know, we beg him for all of these things, but we don't stop to celebrate. So I was like, oh, my word, celebrate. And I'll tell you what happened. I don't even know if I told you this. I was like walking around my room, and I don't get this feeling often. I want to get it now because the feeling was awesome. I felt a pulling, a gravity, a pulling, like my knees to the ground. And I got a bad knee. I've had a bad knee for a long time. And I was like, when I look at scripture and it's like, you should get on your knees, I'm like, Lord, you know, you gave me this knee that mark, so we're not going to do that. But I felt this calling to like pull on my knees. And I remember thinking, I might have even said out loud, okay, God, give me a minute. And I situated what I was doing. And I went down next to the bed. And I went into prayer, and it was instant. And he said, I want you to be a good steward. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, go look it up. And I was like, okay. And then that's when my word got replaced. So I was doing, well, God must have told me to celebrate. And I still think I think that's a theme of my life. I'll probably have to remember to do that forever, because it's not, the performance based in me is like, Oh, I did it. Yes, check, move on. And he's like, sit there and celebrate forever. Maybe I'll celebrate forever. But to be a good steward, I had to have that moment where I was connected enough where I could feel him to go, I wouldn't have felt that if I wasn't in rest. I wouldn't have felt that. I wouldn't have been aligned with him enough. I was just flowing. Like I was like floating down the river at my parents, like, whatever. I don't care what we do. I don't have to do anything. I'm not journaling. I'm not doing anything. I'm just flowing. And he was like, boom. And then he spoke to me. Like if I wasn't obeying him in the season, I might not have felt that. Or if I did, I might not have known what it was because I've never felt that feeling to be pulled to my knees like that. So that's what I'm saying. Like while we're in rest, so much stuff can be given us. It's so easy and so joyful.
And it's your choice. You said that it is the gift that was given to man and woman, that we get to have free will.
Yeah.
And so you get to choose the kind of rest that's going to come in to your life.
Exactly.
Are you going to choose a type of rest that is thrust upon you so you're sick for 2 weeks?
Right.
Or are you going to choose to accept an invitation to rest with your creator? And like Amy's saying, this is an active process. It doesn't just mean you're laying down on the couch and you're doing nothing. That's not the kind of rest that, unless you're sick, and then maybe that's the kind of rest that has been thrust upon you, right? So this idea of rest, we do get to choose how that is brought to us, right? And so this is a kind of an important moment for you to think about. And the paradox of God is that the ointment is in the invitation, right? The invitation is in the ointment. They're at the same time that he's giving you the invitation, the solution is already in there, right? It's like your work on the other side of the challenge, or the challenge, yes, the work that's on the other side of the challenge in order to get to whatever that thing is, right, is given to you right at the beginning. So part of the invitation is the ointment. Rest is the reward, and it is the healing. It is. But in this, you also have an opportunity to sit down and think about what is my ointment? What's the butter for my soul? What is it that feels like home to me? How can I offer that to myself inside of this time of rest? What does it feel like for me to be warm and safe and supported and loved? Where do I find that? And that in unto itself, like you were saying, it just this opportunity to sit and be in that space, to ask the question, because the minute that you ask the question, you are in dialogue.
Yes.
Period. That's it.
Yep.
So it's just making some space to sit down and allow yourself to ask the question. The wisdom is there. The answers are within. Even if you think you don't know, you're going to be given enough. You're going to be given just enough ointment to lubricate to wherever it is that you need to get to next.
Yeah. And I feel like part of the ointment is the message you receive from God. So my message was stewardship. And I feel like that's going to cover me. And that's my protection in this season. And just really quick, I want to say, like, I learned that, like, when people like anoint with oil, I always heard that my whole life. And I know I say that like Baltimore oil, but anyway, people, I'm going to keep saying it anyway. When you were anointed with oil, I studied about what that meant. And that's what the shepherd used to do to the sheep. And it would pour the oil on its head and cover its face so the flies couldn't get to it. So it is many things. One thing it is protection. And I feel like when we receive these words and we stay in alignment with God, that is the oil, that is the anointing that we have, that he's telling me, I gave you this gift of stewardship. Now go and understand what it means. And I will this whole year. It's not like, oh, I looked at the definition. I know, like, I want to really feel it, and I want it to be revealed in my soul, like, to be a good steward. What does that mean? So that is part of, the ointment for me.
And I think
to
that
remain in him.
I also, I want to say to the audience that's kind of coming from my spiritual culture, that's out there doing their vision boards and going to their, annual manifestation workshops. And I'm not saying not to do that. That's
Right.
not what we're saying at all.
Right.
But to come at it with a new perspective.
Exactly.
Come at this with some questions in your
Mhm.
mind and know that it's okay to sit down and have no idea the details of this vision. Because remember what we said. If you're just going to go ahead and tell God, this is exactly what this is going to look like. It's like that. Remember we were talking about that picture, the meme that pops up all the time of the little girl who's holding her whoopee bear. And Jesus has this gigantic teddy bear behind his back. And all she has to do is give over this thing to receive this blessing that she couldn't even possibly imagine.
She can't hold it.
Right. And so the idea of making space, just leave some space in this season instead of hustling yourself through it, grinding yourself through it, being the boss bitch and the boss babe and the, whatever, getting into the grind. Maybe just rest for a moment and think about making some space in a season that is actually asking us and giving the invitation to do that, to make some space for ourselves, to figure out, are all of these things that we're grinding towards, do they create a sense of home for you? Because if they don't, then you're creating a list of things that's matching a culture. It's not matching your design. Exactly. And so go ahead and do your manifestations and go ahead and go to your workshops and do your vision boards and have so much fun. Right. And let there be joy and let there be rest and stillness in that activity that allows space for you to listen and to really hear. So instead of telling God, you're actually receiving and you're listening. And that in itself, that active listening is also restful.
Right. You said something really good that I want to add in. I sent out to my group that one, if you do have a word for the year, what is the opposite of that word? And how long have you been that way? Because if we have a word and a goal, then that means we haven't. So I must not have been a good steward. So let me go back and let me reverse it. And let me see, what is God telling me? Where am I not a good steward? So let's go backwards and say, I'm going to be a good steward. I'm going to, whatever you were, I'm going to be intentional this year. I want to be aligned. That means you're misaligned. That means you are unintentional. Where are you doing that work? But also really journaling about that and figuring that out for yourself so you can figure out really how to change these things. But the last thing that I wrote in my prompting was, what do you have to give up? What are you giving up? It's the girl with the teddy bear. What are you giving to God to get that word? So for me, being a steward, a good steward of whatever he's telling me, it could be my body and my health. It could be my finances. It could be everything. Everything is, we're a good steward of, of on this earth. But it's like, I want to go analyze what it is I'm not doing. And then I know what I need to give up. And it could be a mindset. It might be something physical I have to give up. Maybe it's drinking every night. Maybe that's something I physically, if he's calling me to something and I feel it in my heart, I'm going to stop having those 3 glasses of wine every night. I don't know. I'm just randomly pulling stuff up. But like, for me, maybe it's setting an intention for the year. And there's one smaller goal that I want to do, but what am I giving up? Why have I not been doing that thing? And whatever that reason is, I'm not doing it, is my little teddy bear that I'm going to have to give up. It could be just about anything.
That's the space you're making.
Right, exactly. So that was really good that you do have to consider in this time of rest, what are you giving up?
I love that. Because we have to remember that the cycle requires it, that natural law actually requires you to move something away to create a vacuum to receive what's next.
Well, I think about the trees. In order to bloom again, they have to shed their leaves and they have to die. The leaves died. We have to let go. I mean, that's what fall is about. And then the tree sit with itself. When we're talking about the cycle, what?
Winter, the trees sit in meditation.
Exactly. It's just, that's what we need to be doing, but we might not have shed the leaves. Like we said, the invitation, he's come to let you shed your leaves. You might not have shedded your leaves because you didn't want to let it go. So is there something you need to let go before you move into March? It's where we really get going. So
I love that. So I think, as far as, let's do some like YouTube speak. If you go below into the description of this video, it would be great if we could put some journal prompts in there. So please take a minute and drop down into the description of this particular episode. Can you give us a high five? Give us a like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, super important as far as visibility, or, send the link to a friend or a family member if this message resonated with you. We would absolutely be grateful for the support, but we also want to hear from you. So, if there are questions that you have or validations or comments or, even challenges, just be community minded. We'll say that. Let's be community minded in the way that we talk to each other here. Really important. And, take some time to do those journal prompts. Maybe even inside the comments here, let us know how you would answer those questions so the community can see what's going on inside of you too. Remember that your testimony is one of the most powerful agents of change that you have, not only for yourself, but for another. And so if you could give us a like, make sure to subscribe, please share this with friends and family. And we just want to say thank you again for taking your time to be here with us and have this conversation with us. We look forward to having a very exciting journey here at Soul Buddha, and stay tuned for all of the super fun developments that we know that God's got for us. And we've only just started to talk about.
Exactly. It's only just begun.
It's only just
so excited.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much. We hope you have a beautiful week, and we'll see you next time on Soul Buddha.